Greetings and welcome to the Real FERM podcast. Thank you for joining me this week. Excuse me, we're going to talk about a fun topic because there isn't really anything super interesting in the world of the UFO situations being going on. It seems like it's dying down, so we must be due for something sooner or later. Some things related to it, though. I've been putting on the back burner this idea for a rainy day, which is now. And it is, since, of course, the whole UFO government cover-up of potential advanced technologies developed by captured extraterrestrial vehicles, back engineering, conspiracy things, I figured. And since I'm so adamant about believing and or wanting to believe, however you want to interpret it, I figured I'll give you let's talk about some conspiracies I don't believe in, particularly ones that have very, to me, obvious scientific reasonings for why not, in particular, scientific principles that I'm very familiar with from my background in physics. So we'll get into that, and it shouldn't be. I don't want it to be too long. I'm a little sick, and been busy. So we gotta make it short, sweet, to the point. Not too short that it will leave you wanting, if that's even a thing. Let's get into it. Okie dokie. As I'm looking at myself in the viewfinder, I'm reminded of how blah this looks as it is. It's just what it is until I can move back into my own space. It's been a while. It's a whole story. If you don't know, I'm not going to rehash it, but the pandemic really screwed me over, and I've been designated to this room for a while. But we're working on going to bigger and better places. But it just made me think, if you are watching this on YouTube, and since in particular this episode, there won't be much to see other than my face talking. If you ever want to just listen, all of these are uploaded audio in the audio podcast worlds of all the distribution things. Real Firm Podcast, you can find it wherever that it should be. And but if you don't leave, no need to leave YouTube if you don't want to. That just figured I'd put that out there. Before I get into the conspiracies I don't believe in, there was since I've made it a habit of checking in on the Reality Check series on newsnation with Ross Coulthart, our favorite Australian journalist. There was, interestingly enough, I guess they're making this topic is making the rounds of podcasts and interviewing, online interview space the past week. Telepathy tapes came up in the conversation. He did a interview with not Kai Dickens, but Dr. Diane Powell, who's a neuroscientist who is affiliated with Kai Dickens and that whole world of telepathic autistic kids. So they had an interesting conversation. I'm not going to do the whole thing where I watch clips and react to it and stuff, but it was a great talk. It gave a nice second perspective from it, from like a more of a like genuine scientist. No shade to Kai Dickens, but she's more of the face, the journalistic filmmaker, sort of documentarian, I guess podcaster, or whatever she may title herself in this regard. But Dr. Diane Powell was talking about a lot about, it was over an hour, and they got into a lot of interesting concepts, like one of my favorite, which I'd love to do a deep dive at some point, which is just like the idea of quantum consciousness. This is something that Stephen Greer talks about a lot. The existence of a theoretical consciousness field, which makes me think maybe it's some kind of fifth force of the, not really a force fundamental of the universe, like gravity, electromagnetism, weak and strong nuclear force, but in the same way where it has like a quantum field and it permeates, and then there's packets of conscious energy that, such as photons, in an electromagnetic field. There's conscious ons in the something like that. I don't know, probably not in that way, but it seems like that's a fun idea. Yeah, but they talked about a lot of interesting stuff with the nature of autistic people, like how it happened, like all. It's very cool. I highly recommend listening to it if you haven't seen it. Dr. Diane Powell on Reality Check with Ross Coulthard. That was bad. Nope, sorry about that. Bad impression of an accent. Perceptual versus analytical. Good conversations in that as well, which is a big thing. This whole idea of science, left brain, right brain, and these more esoteric phenomena involving consciousness have less and less to do with analytical. Scientific isn't really the word, but what is usually associated with scientific process, which is just rationality, analytics, observing what you can see and touch, measuring it, quantifying it, versus perceiving and intuiting things that just kind of come to your mind, which is obviously a real thing. But I think that discussion is very important in all of these aspects, all of these wild interdimensional NHI, whatever, telepathy theories, where it's the enemy of understanding those things is the materialistic analytical view, trying to apply it to them. I've touched upon that in previous discussions here. So just a quick little, I just watched that before, so I want to touch on that. Telepathy tapes making the rounds. Go check it out. All right, so conspiracies I don't believe in. Starting with one that is very much related to the alien UFO government cover-up thing. And this is one that every time I've heard people say it, I'm like, well, I don't know. Because I'm very much, me. I like to lean into the UFO conspiracies, but a lot of people talk about this idea that the alien, whatever extraterrestrial visited, crashed, Roswell, whatever, back engineered craft, and then they insert this other thing like, and that's how we got technologies like fiber optics and integrated circuits, and then we had an explosion of information technology. And I am quite certain that is not the case, even if we assume that aliens did crash land or were intercepted in a malicious way by the U.S. government. Who knows? And they back engineered, got some propulsion technology, may or may not, but they almost certainly, there is 100% a traceable physics history of the development of theories and engineering that led to lasers, fiber optics, and integrated circuits. Being a student of physics for many years, I learned about all these things. So when I hear people say that, I'm like, well, now you're sounding very scientifically illiterate, which is understandable. I don't expect the average person to know the theories, the discovery of the theories that led to those technologies. So it makes sense that you can immediately, if you're already in that headspace of crazy things, or crazy that would seem to be crazy to the average person. You think, well, I can't understand how information travels at the speed of light through cables and how computers work and how Wi-Fi works. So it would make sense to me that it's alien technology, because how can we figure that out? I kind of see how that mindset is. However, there is a clear path. It all started with quantum mechanics, and that was obviously developed before the nuclear weaponry situation in World War II that in the UFO lore obviously is the jumping off point of when all of this activity, contact, observing of the phenomenon started happening. So let's just quick overview. Late 19th century, late 1800s, you have the electromagnetic theory coming together real nice, and a man named a German, I think he was German, maybe Austrian, I forget, I should have looked it up, Max Planck, pretty sure he was German, was toying around with this maddening concept of black body radiation, which I forget when I was talking about that, but one of these episodes, it was the orbs in the outback, anyway, heat sink, anyway, and they were trying to figure out why an object, when it's heated and there's all these, why doesn't it just keep spurting out infinite ultraviolet rays, and they call it the ultraviolet catastrophe, because in the theory of if light is all just waves, then this would happen. Very mathematically kind of complicated thing that I'm not going to try to explain, but they had this conundrum, and then Max Planck, together with Einstein, kind of posited this idea that, well, if you treat the light as particles and then you do the math in that way, it solves the issue of the black body radiation, and it gives you the proper curve that agrees with the measurements. And that's how it all started, with the light is also a particle thing, right? So that just started from there. It just ballooned over the next couple decades into many information technology based revolutions in science to lead to information technology. Sorry, that was a poorly worded sentence, but you get what I mean, I hope. And lasers was, speaking of Albert Einstein, very particularly not his idea in the technology itself, but the theory of laser stands for light amplification by this light. Here it is: light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. Laser. It's an acronym. And he had this after, and then another thing he did was the photoelectric effect, which was another conundrum that they had, which they couldn't figure out until they did the particle wave duality, discovered that. And then so once you have the particle idea, then he starts doing his Einstein genius autistic right brain. I'm just kidding. Who knows? Probably, but it doesn't matter. It's just a fun observation or hypothesis relating back to recent things. His thought experiments and his theoretical physics math equations. And he comes up with the stimulated emission of radiation, which is which they had known that you can have spontaneous emission of radiation, being that an electron is in an excited state from some excitation, and then when it relaxes due to some other equilibrium thing, whatever, it emits light that is equal to the energy transition of the electron states, and then but it's kind of just random and it shoots out and then it can absorb. But then Einstein, with the particle thing, he got this idea that you could have stimulated emission, which is if a photon hits in a particular way, it hits an atom or whatever with an electronic state and it excites it. and then it immediately re-emits the exact same, not the exact same, but an identical photon of the incident photon, so that when the emitted photon after the photon is emitted, it is of the same energy, frequency, polarization, completely coherent with the one that. So from there, you develop lasers, which is you engineer this scenario where a bunch of like usually it's some kind of special gas that's designed to do this, where it gets this cascading effect of stimulated emission, and something is excited, and then it excites all the other things, and then it just emits a beam of light that is all the same identical photons. Therefore, one color, one collimated, coherent beam. The first person to do that was with microwaves. Interestingly enough, it was actually the maser that was first. Charles Towns, who I did a paper on when I was in undergraduate or graduate school. I forget which one, but I remember writing some kind of paper on his stuff. That was a while ago. I forgot a lot about it, but Charles Towns develops the maser in 1953. And, oh, by the way, 1917 was when Albert Einstein proposed stimulated emission. So again, this is all before the nuclear thing, Manhattan Project. This is before Roswell. This is before. Now, of course, let me just say, you could, if you really want to go super conspiracy and lean into this, you could say, well, Einstein could have been, aliens have been here before too, so Einstein could have been influenced by them, sure, whatever. But what I'm trying to argue against is that when the UFO stuff started happening, we didn't just get these technologies from that. That's what I'm trying to say. So, yeah, and the 1960 was when the first working laser was built using a synthetic ruby crystal, Theodore Maiman. Yeah, quantum theory, all that. And that brings us to fiber optics, which is really the huge information technology that people cite when they talk about alien technologies being given to humanity, which usually involves lasers, I believe, as the source of. I don't know a lot about it, but I remember reading something where I think lasers are usually like the source of where the light enters the fiber optic cable, so that it's very coherent beam of light. But anyway, back in the 1840s, 1850s, they come up with total internal reflection, which is in optics, where light going through from one medium to another with a higher index of refraction, or vice versa, whatever. I don't know why I'm trying to be ultra scientific about this. The light goes in and it perfectly reflects 100% back. So basically, they get that, and then once they understand how to design the glass in 1950s to 1960s, advances in material purity and glass manufacture allowed extremely low loss glass fibers to transmit information efficiently. So they could get this total internal reflection throughout a tube of glass, so that the light just right through the glass without leaking out. That's the big thing about it, to get that total internal reflection to continue. And then in 1966, so this was proposed after the UFOs started coming to the U.S. Charles Kao in 1966 proposed optical fibers made from extremely pure glass, revolutionizing communications technologies. And then, 1970s onward, commercial fiber optic communication systems began widespread deployment, transforming global telecommunications. Now, so that was invented after the aliens came. Allegedly, the aliens came, but yeah, I mean, again, what I'm just trying to point out is there is a very clear path of discovery that leads up to it. It's not just it popped out of nowhere. This technology is crazy. We can't understand it. We very much fully can understand it, and that's how we keep reproducing it. And the other technology that they reference is integrated circuits, which again goes back to quantum mechanics, solid state physics, the quantum theory, the electron states inside of, in particular, semiconductors and silicon. They started discovering this again back in the 1920s and 40s with the band structure of semiconductors, and realizing that there's these very interesting gaps in energy, and you can take advantage of them, which ultimately leads to the engineering feat of the transistor, which is a little neat semiconductor-based device that can it can do a few things, but the important thing in terms of integrated circuits is the ability to have an on and off state, hence 1 and 0 in computation. So you can once you design a transistor, and then you can miniaturize it digitally on an integrated circuit, you can get this whole logic gate array of on-off switches that can transmit and compute information. This happened in 1947. So now this is right around the time where the UFOs were incident on Roswell. This is true. In 1947, Bell Labs physicists John Bardeen, Walter Brayton, and William Shockley invented the transistor, revolutionizing electronics. And 1958, Jack Kilby, and 1959, Robert Noyce independently invented the integrated circuit, integrating multiple transistors onto a single silicon chip. So that's pretty cool. They discovered it. They discovered that kind of engineering feat independently. Again, you can make some kind of wild argument that the aliens helped us create that. I discover that. I highly doubt it. There's a very clear historical scientific path to discovery there. Not some out of nowhere magical technology. So yeah, I do not believe in that part of the alien conspiracy. Another one kind of related to that, especially sticking with the physics stuff, is another technology. Let me just keep talking. Sorry, thoughts are popping in my head. The wireless communications. But the conspiracy that I'm talking about here isn't really the invention of them, for the reasons I just listed, adjacent to the technologies that I just talked about. Same thing with wireless technologies. Radio. I mean, obviously, radio communication was discovered long before. Around when was radio communication discovered? I did not. I did not search that, but I know it's quite just for completeness. When was radio communication? Just so I don't leave any holes here. Late 19th century. Okay, so electromagnetic. We already kind of went over that tangentially. James Clerk Maxwell, electromagnetism, all that before quantum mechanics. So that was, yeah. And then yeah. So once the transmission of information through manipulation of electromagnetic radiation was around long before the aliens. So the aliens have been around long before us. I will reiterate that. But in terms of their more obvious interventions, or apparently obvious interventions in modern times with respect to nuclear detonations in World War II. Okay. But what I was going to talk about specifically of the conspiracy side is the whole, and this is actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it's not really a conspiracy. It's more of a misunderstanding, a fear of technology, which is the whole 5G. Well, no, there was a conspiracy that 5G was going to be some mind control thing or something. There's always a conspiracy for something, but for everything, pretty much. But what I was more referring to is the whole it's bad for you and it causes cancer and you should avoid it, which is it's actually very simply false in a way that I don't even have to research anything to tell you. But I did just confirm with my sources here of the internet to back up what I would say. But yeah, excuse me. You've got electromagnetic radiation. It is a fundamental energy transmission phenomenon of the universe. We did not invent it. It comes from all over the universe. The sun is a nuclear reactor in the sky. It is blasting us with radiation 24/7. Our ozone layer protects us from a lot of the ionizing radiation. That's the radiation. This word radiation is what gets everyone scared. Radiation is essential for us to live. It is essential for us to see. The radiation from the light is important, or you would not be able to see me on the camera. All light that you can see is electromagnetic radiation. It is the exact same fundamental entity of the same nature of X-rays, of gamma rays, of microwaves, of infrared, of radio waves. All the same thing. They just differ in their energy spectrum, in their wavelength, and their frequency, which are all related by the speed of light. Okay? Very simple. Ionizing radiation is what causes cancer and damages your cells and your DNA because it's very high energy and it's very small wavelength. They can penetrate deep. And yeah, and then there's particle radiation, which is a whole different thing. But for now, we're just talking about electromagnetic radiation, which is at its core, you can think of it, apropos our earlier discussion of particle wave duality, you can think of it as a high energy little particle or a transverse electromagnetic field and magnetic field. Electric field and magnetic field. The electric field is the important part that really carries the energy. Now, so yeah, I mean that's pretty much all there is to it. The sun is far more radiation damaging than your phone, your Wi-Fi router, your microwave. Interesting thing about the microwave oven is there's nothing. The only danger about it is the power that is in the like the actual power, the density of energy that is put out by the microwave oven. It's tuned to a frequency such that it resonates with water molecules. So in food, there's always some kind of water, and it rotates them really fast. And then if you blast it with enough of this high energy microwaves, the water heats up really fast. So there is a potential heating damage component that can be in any radiation if it resonates in a certain way, depending on the electronic structure for water, and the microwave frequency that's in microwave ovens is tuned so that it heats it up in that way. But again, it needs high power. So the microwave is safe as long as you don't put your body in it or the water in your blood will boil. And that's just because of the power. It's not because of the microwave is dangerous. The same frequency of microwaves around is used in the phones, in the Wi-Fi. It's the beautiful thing about transmitting information is you don't need a lot of power. You don't need a lot of energy to transmit information. So it's very low power, around the same frequencies as a microwave oven. Not the exact same, but it's in that range. It's particularly like Wi-Fi. And yeah, it just waves around through the air, passes right through you. There's negligible heating that goes on unless you're standing in front of a high power microwave oscillator, which you can make weapons out of. And that's what they theorize with the government taking down the poor extraterrestrial craft that are just trying to peacefully cross through high power microwave weapons. But yeah, that's the difference. There is the power. It's not about the nature of the wavelength or the radiation. The only time radiation is dangerous is if it's above the ultraviolet. The higher ultraviolet, which comes from the sun, which is why you get sunburn when you stay out in the sun too long, and you can get skin cancer, because it is ionizing radiation. Not so much so that you can't go out in it, but enough that if you stay out long enough, you get essentially a radiation burn. Your skin gets red, it peels off. Not as bad as a gamma radiation burn, which kind of penetrates through to your DNA and it causes some real gnarly damage. If you've ever seen the Chernobyl HBO series, that was wild, very cool. I highly recommend if you haven't seen, you're interested in that. So yeah, nothing wrong with 5G. Nothing wrong until we find some kind of strange resonant thing with the brain that these frequencies fuck with, but there's so far has been no evidence and no ill effects have been observed. There's nothing to be afraid of there. So yeah, and nobody's trying to control your mind with 5G. That's a thing where, again, that's more like neuroscience stuff that I wouldn't even be able to start to understand, but I don't think, yeah, I'm not even going to go there. 5G is not trying to control your mind. All right, calm down. Not that anyone's riled up about it. I just, all right. And then there's a couple more that I staunchly don't believe in. And then I'll end with one that I'm not really sure about. Another one that I 100%, pretty much 100% don't believe in is chemtrails. The planes. It's clouds. Literally in the sense that it's the same as a cloud, but it's not literally a natural cloud. It's just created by the condensation of the jet engine as it passes through a atmosphere that is saturated with water molecules. And what are clouds? Condensed water molecules. And when the jet goes through a high saturated water patch in the air, the jet engine is constantly compressing air so that it can push it out the back end so that it can propel the aircraft forward. Because we haven't figured out the gravity stuff except Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Skunk Works. And so you compress the air, shoot it out the back, you get more Newton's third law. And when you pass through lots of water vapor in the air, it turns into a more condensed form and it starts deflecting / absorbing light, and you see a contrail, short for condensation. Condensation trails. At high altitudes, 30,000 to 40,000 feet, temperatures are extremely low, and hot exhaust meets the surrounding cold atmosphere, causing rapid cooling. That's the other thing, rapid cooling of the water vapor emitted by the engines. The cold air at high altitude typically contains very little moisture, but can become supersaturated. The extra moisture introduced by the jet exhaust can tip air into that's what it was. Sorry, my explanation was a little off. The extra moisture introduced by the jet exhaust can tip it into supersaturation. The water vapor rapidly condenses on tiny soot particles. It nucleates from the jet exhaust, and it creates this seed to build cloud seeds. Some people, there's been hypotheses of people controlling the weather with cloud seeding, and that just came to mind. Sorry about that. And then, yeah, these ice crystals, billions in number, form a visible white trail behind the aircraft. Yeah, so that's what that is. Could they be spraying chemicals into the air? I guess I can't test that, but it seems a little counterintuitive to be poisoning your population's air that you also have to live in. The powers that be that would be doing that, so that it's just 100% doesn't make sense to me. Speaking of poisoning people, here's another one. Fluoride in the water. to make people stupid. That's another one I absolutely do not believe in. Now, is there evidence that fluoride is toxic and neurotoxic? Absolutely. Is there evidence to suggest that they put it in the water to make people stupid? I don't think so. Again, for the same reason. Why would they? Is it so? On the flip side, there's a very clear dental health application for it. The fluoride, sodium fluoride, which is a salt, sodium and fluorine combined, and it's dissolved in water, and the fluoride ions have some kind of chemical reaction with your enamel or saliva and your enamel, and it creates the mineral, what is it called? Hydroxyapatite, fluorapatite, and it's more resistant to acid, reducing the risk of cavities, and it just helps your teeth stay not rotting. So, do I think it's a good idea to put fluoride in the water to just force people to have better healthy teeth? Not necessarily. So I'm not saying I agree with that it's in there, but I don't think they're doing it on purpose to make people stupid. That's what I was going to say. What's more likely? They initially discovered that fluoride was very good for dental health and that a lot of people had bad dental health. So they were like, let's put it in let's put it in the tap water so it helps people with their dental health. And then later on, they're like, ooh, yeah, it is kind of bad if you drink it in high quantities, consume it in high quantities. Or did they find out that it makes you stupid in high quantities first, and then the dental thing, and be like, well, we can sneak it in under the guise of dental health? I highly doubt it. And furthermore, the dose of it, typical fluoride levels in drinking water range from 0.7 to 1 part per million. Well studied and safe for consumption. It doesn't. What I searched here does not say what the toxic levels are, but I'm sure it's well above that. And obviously, when you brush your teeth, it says don't eat the toothpaste, don't swallow the fluoride mouthwash for a reason. Because you're not, you get a little bit in there, whatever. Your body will filter it out. But you really need to ingest large amounts to have significant damage. All right, before this gets too long, let's go to the final two. One of these I already touched on, which is the flat Earth thing. I made a fun analogy about how skeptics of super ultra materialist skeptics of the UFO phenomenon remind me of flat earthers, in that because they refuse to accept anything that they can't see with their own eyes, in the same way that flat earthers can't see with their own eyes that the earth is round, so they refuse to believe it until they're shown that the earth is round by zooming out of the earth. Yeah, I'm not going to go too much into that. It's just silly. It's not flat. For me, as someone who studied physics, math, gravity, you really have to jump through some hoops for science to work, because gravity and the gravitational constant and all that are very much foundational upon the spherical nature of the Earth would have to be super altered to make everything else work. It's just absurd. Well, okay, so the disk of Earth is accelerating at 9.8 meters per second squared through space, and is to an apparently infinite velocity, because it's accelerated to achieve the pull back to I don't know what they. My simplest thing that I always say is, you go out on a boat and you look over the horizon, particularly if you're not in a giant ocean. The Gulf of America, is a great example. You should, if the Earth was flat and the ocean was flat, you should very much be able to see the lights of Mexico City if you're off the south. I don't know where Mexico City is laterally, but If you're off the west coast of Florida, the great state in which I reside, and on the west side as well, right alongside the Gulf of America, and at night, if you look across to the west, you should be able to see the lights from Mexico City. You can't because the Earth is curved. Very simple. Okay. Finally, one that I'm not actually sure about, and that's the moon landing. I lean to not believe in the conspiracy of the moon landing not happening. It's a tough one though. I never went super deep into it aside from just hearing people talk about it. Before I finish off with talking about that, let me just list some of the other popular ones. JFK assassination. I'm pretty sure something sketchy was going on there, and it wasn't the way they said it. 9/11 inside job. That one, I don't know. I don't know. Area 51 and aliens. You know my stance on that. New World Order, Illuminati, yeah, there's a lot of vaccination conspiracies. No, we're not going to get into that one. Though I don't believe in any conspiracies. But I don't, there's the COVID-19 conspiracies. Yeah, I don't know. We're not going to get into that. Anyway, JFK. Well, we might be hearing about that one soon. Apparently, Trump has ordered for it to happen, but we haven't heard from it yet. All right, so the moon landing, I really, the moon landing people talk about, they bring up some good points when they really point it out to you, but it just seems like, I don't know, I mean, it kind of makes sense that some of the footage or the photos were faked for publicity, but I also think even if that happened, they probably still went. There's a lot of... So what are some of the flag movement footage shows the American flag seemingly waving as if in the wind. Counter-argument, NASA explains the flag moved because astronauts twisted the pole while planting it, causing vibrations in the low-gravity vacuum environment. Shadows and lights. Photos show shadows at different angles, suggesting multiple artificial light sources. Counter-argument, perspective and uneven lunar terrain naturally create varied shadow directions. No visible stars. Photographs taken by astronauts show a completely black sky with no visible stars. Counter-argument. Cameras set for bright lunar surface exposures cannot simultaneously capture faint stars in the background. Like, all these counter-arguments seem very valid to me. And the big one that people talk about, especially I remember Joe Rogan had on one of those guys not too long ago that was a super anti-moon landing person. And that guy was no disrespect to him, but he seemed like a bit of a clown. I respect him for standing his ground and what he believes in, but I just don't understand the people that dedicate so much of their mental energy to something that is so... I get it, I'm dedicating a lot of mental energy to aliens and shit, but the moon landing happened. It's over. It's gone. It's in the past. Nothing else will come of it. I just don't get the big deal of why you have to keep focusing on it so much. So it really feels like it's not that important to me, especially because I wasn't alive for it. I wasn't like shown it and told it was real. So I guess I don't have that emotional attachment to it. But yeah, anyway, the radiation, the Van Allen belts is what they talk about. How could they survive? People say you can never survive passing through the Van Allen radiation belts. The only thing that says here that I have is counter-argument. NASA selected trajectories minimizing radiation exposure and spacecraft shielding sufficiently protected astronauts. I feel like that's plausible. So again, I don't know. I haven't really looked into it enough to fully form an opinion where I'm like, I know for certain or almost know for certain that it was real. I lean to believe it was real. But there is definitely some sketchy things. And there's some others. The technological limitations. Critics argue the technology of the 1960s wasn't advanced enough to safely land astronauts on the moon, return them to Earth. Counter-argument, while challenging, the engineering and technological advancements of NASA during the era were documented and validated by extensive testing, simulations, and missions. I believe that is true. And there's the motive of the space race with Russia and the Cold War, and we wanted to look good. Like, the motivations do kind of make sense for the conspiracy. I don't know. Lost or destroyed original tapes. NASA admitted the original Apollo 11 telemetry data tapes were overwritten or lost, suggest a cover-up. Counter-argument, although original telemetry tapes were mistakenly reused, backups and reconstructed footage exist, providing ample historical evidence. So, there you have it. A fun list of... Wow, my hair looks fucking weird like that. Alright, it is what it is. Conspiracies that I don't subscribe to. And that's that. Hope you enjoyed that. I didn't have much else to talk about. Next time, I hope to get back to the conspiracy that I do believe in. And that is the extraterrestrials are here. They're queer. Get used to it. Hopefully we'll get something by next week. And as the running joke goes, I'll have a guest soon. I need a space to have a guest in. That's the problem. Anyway, peace and love. Look up. Blessed are those who have not seen but still believe. And I'll see you next time.